So today we are going to see in depth on how to migrate your VMs, what are the options you have, and most importantly, the 6 R's. I don't remember the research organization who identified the 6 R's. It is most probably Gartner or somebody. There are 6 R's that are important.
Kumar, sorry to interrupt you. Just a small question. So previously you were showing the architectural viewpoint of how do you migrate and all that, right?
Yeah,
So what would be an engineer's?
the 6 R's or the holy principles are the guidelines that most of the industry uses for migrating the VMs from one place to another place. It might be either P2V, that is physical to virtual, or virtual to virtual. Both are possible. So this is broadly what we are going to look at today. The 6 R's of migration, assessment-based approach, considerations when to choose which of those R's, and discuss each of those R's of migration and how some companies leverage the 6 R's. So what is the 6 R's first of all? I keep on referring to 6 R's. What are they? Let us look at that now. So as you can see here, retain, retire, rehost, replatform, refactor, re-architect. These are the 6 R's or the guiding principles that are going to help you when you're going to do a migration or transformation in your company. So we will look at each of them in detail later, little later. But for now, just remember that these are the 6 R's and these are the industry standard terms. Almost everybody will use this theme or somewhat similar theme. The R's will not change most probably. Most of the places where I have met with or the clients I have met with, they will understand the R's. If you tell them that you have to retain this machine, they will understand what you mean by retain. If you go and tell them that you have to rehost it, or in other words, sometimes people call it as lift and shift, that will also be understandable. And of course, retire, I don't even have to speak. It speaks for itself. Replatform means probably you will just change a little bit, an operating system will change, or an application version will change, or small changes. So that is what a replatform is. When it is a refactoring, that means that you need to recompile the operating system from one flavor to another flavor, or you might want to change from NoSQL to SQL. So all those things are possible. That is what refactor is. When I'm saying re-architect, you are going to rebuild everything from scratch. That application is no longer adequate. If you remember the previous discussion that we had, it is not functionally adequate, it is not technically adequate. Then you are going to re-architect that application for your future. So these are the 6 R's that we are going to see in detail in a short while. So moving,
But even then, sometimes it doesn't go.
yeah. So moving forward, we are going to see the different approaches for this. One of the common approaches is to do an assessment. It ties in very well with the previous assessment strategies we spoke about. You can look at it from different viewpoints. You can look at it from importance, technical adequacy, functional adequacy, from a business perspective, contractual perspective, compliance perspective. You look at an application or a landscape of application or a portfolio of application from different approaches. So this is an assessment based approach. Some of the samples are shown here, and each application will be given a rating, or there will be a checklist or a questionnaire based on which you will do an assessment. For example, there's one shown here in the operations is how much time is spent on acquiring the hardware and maintenance. What is the change management streamlining process gains that you will do when you change that application? When you go to security aspect of it, that is in the bottom part, you will see what is the risk exposure in the existing architecture. What is the security incident blast radius? If a security incident happens on this application, how many instances are going to be affected? What is ease of introducing an RBAC policy? Or what is the security posture, current security posture of the application, and how can I manage it in the future? So you give a ranking like this. And there might be some compliance and regulatory reasons also, whether this application will meet the new tax laws that has been made, or do we have to completely buy a new version of software or a hardware that needs to be meeting the compliance standards. Suddenly, somebody will come and say SSL poodle virus has come in, so you cannot use SSL version 2 or 3 anymore. You have to use TLS, and your SSL certificates are all no longer valid. So how do you migrate everything suddenly now? But you still need to be compliant because your compliance policy says that everything has to be encrypted end to end. So you do an application based, I mean assessment based approach for migrating your VMs, and some of the examples are shown here. So that is one way. And what are your considerations when you are going to select the multiple hours? So let us say that you have done your assessments now, and after your assessments, you decided some applications are important, some applications are not important. So which are to apply for which application now? That is what we are going to see next. So this is continuation of the same theme. You will create a roadmap for that application first, and then in that roadmap you will also identify the costs along with that, and then what are the improvements possible for that service or that application group, and what is the risk of not making that application or not changing that application, and whether the adequacy of that application to a corporate business goals. So you add these parameters or these values also to your application analysis or assessment. And once this is also done, it gives more easier inputs to your R's. So based on this effort, you map your drivers to your migration strategy. Say for example, if you say that your migration effort is going to be high, and then the business value of that application is also going to be high, then it might be better to re-architect the application or replace the application itself instead of just lifting and shifting it. Because the value is high, you want to make it native to the target architecture. So that is going to be your highest priority. Making it natively run on cloud is going to have more benefit than having a lift and shift. Likewise, if you come to the bottom left corner, if a migration effort is very, very low and business effort is also low, try to retire it instead of just moving it. So you map your applications, you have this as a guiding principle, and then start looking at the different R's itself. So let us go ahead and see one by one next. So let us start with the retain. That means that you are going to retain the application as it is. You decided this application is very, very important, and there is a medium complexity attached to it or a medium business value attached to it. So you decided to retain it. That means that your existing operating systems are unsupported in the cloud, or your applications are not going to be supported in the cloud, or the application is very, very old that there is a huge risk of moving it from on-premise to cloud. Then in those cases, what people do is they tend to run it in on-premise itself. They just leave it in the on-premise and they retain it as it is. They don't touch it. So that is also a possible use case. Or for example, if you have mainframes running your data center, as on today, to my knowledge, at least there is no cloud offering that allows you to run mainframes. IBM software was discussing of allowing a Z series in the cloud, but I'm not sure it has been publicly offered already. But to my knowledge, as on today, mainframes cannot be put into the cloud, and any application running on mainframes, if you cannot modify it, they will have to be remain on the on-premise infrastructure itself. So that is retain for you 1 hour. So if I'm
Sorry, Kumar. One thing is like, what is a mainframe? I'm not like, absolutely sure. I thought it's just another server.
Yeah, it is another server. The architecture of a mainframe server is a little different from an X series architecture. There are multiple architectures available. For example, the Intel series is different. That is x86 architecture, where Amazon and Azure all use x86 architecture. Whereas Sun Solaris and IBM AIX machines and HP UX use a RISC-based architecture. A RISC in the sense RISC, reduced instruction set, or in other words, how they compute data and how to do a computation or calculation is done differently between x86 architecture and RISC-based architecture and mainframes. So functionally,
Okay, got it.
the compilation of the code, how it runs, will be different. In other words, the code is not transportable from one architecture to another architecture easily. So that
Something like Mac and Windows.
no, Mac and Windows both run on x86 Intel CPU. We are talking about the CPU architecture here. Mac is
No, previously Mac used to run with some other architecture, right?
yes. Previously, Mac was having a different architecture, but Steve Jobs made that shift of Mac running on Intel, and again,
Yeah, yeah.
Cook is looking to go back to A7 or what is the latest Apple architecture, but I'm not sure whether the latest Mac is moved back. But as on to my knowledge, both of them are running an x86 architecture and applications
Okay.
portable easily.
Got the difference. Yeah.
So we saw 1 hour. We are going to see the next hour now. The next hour is retire. That means that that application is no longer useful, or it is a duplicate of an existing application. Or let us say your company is merging with another company. Both of them are having HR department of human resources, and both of you are using, let us say, SAP for HRMS, human resource management. So you will obviously retire one of them after, of course, merging the data. So there might be those possible cases, and it might be because that you are creating a cluster and you find that there are multiple redundant nodes are there and you no longer require that many redundant nodes. So you retire that. Or you might bring in a new application which will replace an old application. So that case also you will retire it. So you choose a retire option in any of those possible use cases. So rehost, that means that you are copying the existing operating system and putting it into it. I mean, the disk volumes alone is changing. In other words, you can see the green area. That green area is changing, whereas your disk volumes, so your operating system files, app, and user data all are going to be moved to your target cloud. So that is how you should remember when I say rehost or lift and shift. I'm going to create a copy of my operating system and disk volumes, and I'm going to deploy it in my cloud. So almost 80 to 90 percentage of commercial migrations happens in this area, that is rehosting. And to spend a little bit more time here on rehosting, um, VMware has a built-in exporter to do this. If you install this plugin, you say that this is my AWS account, this is my secret key and access key. VMware has the ability to move your on-premise VMs directly to cloud and start them in EC2s directly. Almost smooth hands-off approach, typical virtual to virtual migration. That is for VMware based machines. If you have some other machine which is not already virtualized, you have products like Cloud Endure and Platespin, and all those products are there, which will allow you to create a binary copy of your operating system and application data and other user data, and then you can use your AWS import export option to import them into your cloud. And finally, Amazon itself provides you a service called Amazon SMS Server Migration Service. We will look at that a little at the end. That also will help you to migrate your VMs using this rehost option. Or in other words, the third R rehost is where most of the activity happens in the migration world. So that is why from here onwards we will see a little bit of pros and cons, whereas in retain and retire there's not much to discuss. The pros is you can read it for yourself. It's one of the fastest means of migration, and it is a reduced cost because your on-premise machine is going to still be up and running, and only when your cloud is ready for taking the business load, you are going to shift your traffic there. And since your application hypervisor and hardware is all going to be different, but your application could still be running here. The migration could be having any of the different combinations. It could be application level, it could be hypervisor level, or it could be a physical hardware level. And as you can see here, it can be automated or it can be tool assisted. In other words, I gave you an example of VMware, and you can automate it. And Amazon SMS gives you a fantastic scheduling option. So you can say when my servers has to be migrated, you just configure everything in the dashboard, and then you go home. Tomorrow you come back, all your machines will be migrated. So it takes care of scheduling when the automation should happen or migration should happen, and supports the migration of system with configuration. That is, your user data also gets copied there. The one problem is your OS is also getting copied here. That means that, let us say you are running a very old version of your operating system. There is a possibility that it might not run in the latest hardware that is available in your cloud service provider. So not always that is going to work. As it says, very better than me, you will retain the same operating system and settings in the target environment. So this means that it might create some dependencies on your operating system and the hardware level, which will not allow you to make all the benefits of your cloud. And finally, you may not use AWS services that will scale. For example, remember the license problems that we spoke about yesterday. You might not be able to use RDS, even though you are running Oracle on-premise. You might not be able to lift and shift it to cloud and take benefits of Oracle RDS multi-AC deployments, which gives you or which removes the need for running a cluster on your on-premise. Typically, what enterprises do is they run a database in a cluster, and the cluster software is very costly commercially, as well as it requires a lot of skill to maintain. But if you come to Amazon RDS, all you have to do is check a box which says multi-AC, or just choose a drop-down option saying multi-AC. Automatically, you are getting a cluster. So some of these features might not be possible for you. And of course, your application performance benefits are going to remain the same if you're going to have the same operating system characteristics also. Because, unless you upgrade it to a cloud native operating system or latest version of operating system or application functionality, it is not going to improve at all. And in other words, you are going to bring all your on-premise problems to the cloud, because you are bringing the old operating system. That means your patching cycle, your maintenance cycle, your upgrade cycles, your security cycles, everything comes. In other words, as it says there, you don't get to retire much technical debt. You are bringing the technical debt online as well. So Rehost is fast, but not the best. That is what we need to remember here. So here is the tools that are common in the industry. Memorize these tools, memorize the functionality of these two tools at least. Okay, these three. One is Amazon own tool. The other two are industry standard tools. This can do a bit by bit synchronous copy. Any bit that is changed on your on-premise operating system or disk, it will automatically copy it to the cloud. So Cloud Endure is very good in that matter. And RaceMe is another tool that I have also used. I mean, these two tools are very commonly used, at least in the organizations that I have worked with. These two are also, Amazon is saying, are good in copying the data. And finally, Amazon SMS service. And of course, as in any migration, you will do a POC, and then you will migrate some smaller number of servers, and then you will set up a migration factory itself. When the number of VMs is going to be huge, you want to automate it, or you want to do a factory based approach. Whenever I say factory based approach, it should run with a minimum intervention of people as a whole. It should copy the VM, it should send it to the cloud and automatically start it. So that is what a typical factory approach is. This way you will reduce the manual efforts, you will reduce the repetitive tasks, and when you reduce the repetitive task, the human error or any error that might come in is reduced, and cost also decreases.
So factories, like in other words, is just like you try to use some software or something like that.
So moving forward from Rehost, we are going to see how to do replatform. When I say replatform, the imagery, as you can see here, I'm going to move only my application data and my user data. My underlying hardware is going to be different. My operating system is going to be different, and I'm going to add new data disks also. So in other words, I have the possibility of upgrading my operating system from an older version to newer version, or I can upgrade my database to a newer version, or it can be just a binary compiler change also. The underlying runtime can also be changed. So in other words, I just move a very, very small amount of data in Replatform. Just take the application code and put it into our target system. And probably a funny example or a similar example that I can give is think of all of us moving one iPhone to another iPhone. Typically, that is what we do. We just move only the relevant data because your hardware is going to be different, your operating system is going to be different, and automatically the cloud syncs the application related data only. You can call that as a replatform, but again, both of them are in your hands. That doesn't mean that we are not doing replatform. It's an easier way to understand what replatform does. Pros and cons. It is you can readily run any of your cloud services without doing much changes to your code, because for example, Amazon RDS, Aurora, you can straight away start using them because you're moving only your application data here. In other words, you have a MySQL database on-premise. You can export those MySQL directly and import it into Amazon Aurora or RDS. Or if you have let us say, NFS server running in your on-premise, or an FTP server running on-premise, you can set up an EFS and copy all your work data there. The workspaces is like itsy bitsy. They say that Office 365 and workspaces are working great. People don't agree with that, including me. But yeah, you can move your mailboxes to workspaces, and if you have your virtual desktop VDA clients, you can use workspaces for that. And you don't have any dependency on your hardware, you don't have any dependency on your hypervisor. So that way, you are moving only your application code, and none of the baggage of older hardware, older operating system comes to the cloud. You can, let us say, you are running database on-premises. Upgrading the database comes into your headache. Maintaining the security of the database, user management, all those things are coming into your headache. And there is a older hardware, then moving it to newer hardware also in your problem. Now, remember the cluster problem that we spoke about previously, that is also going away. So these are some of the positives of using a replatform option, but there are some negatives also, because replatform projects are not going to be fastest way of migrations. It is having a lot of benefits, but it is not going to be the fastest, because you are going to identify what is the application that you are going to migrate, which you might have done already, but you are going to see whether the application compatibility is going to be there with the target, and what is the amount of data that you want to copy. And remember, data has gravity, or data has stickiness or resistance. It doesn't like to move. So it depends upon how much data you are going to move and where you are going to move. If it is an RDS to RDS or MySQL to MySQL, that's fine. It might use the replication option. But if you have few terabytes or petabytes, you are going to spend a lot of time configuring it, customizing it, setting up the rules and all those things. And most importantly, you are not sure what is going to be the performance until you start running the on cloud infrastructure. So you are going to run some time parallelly to ensure everything is good, and then you are going to cut over to the new one. This is true for all the other cases, but sometimes when you're doing a rehost, you are copying the operating system itself. There is not much you can do there. There is no point in running it both the places, because once you move it, you started configuring it on the target system. You cannot readily run parallel. So whereas when it comes to re-platform, you can run both parallelly, and that means that twice the cost, twice the maintenance effort, and more management effort in coordinating with multiple teams and planning it. So these are some of the disadvantages of doing a re-platform type of migration. And there are products, third-party products available. We spoke about it in the previous video. Amazon Data Migration Service or Database Migration Service is one product that directly tries to solve some of those headaches. and there are two other commercially available products are there, which helps you to do the replatform itself. So,
So replatform is more like not moving from iPhone to iPhone, it's moving data from iPhone to Android.
well, that is what people told me when we were moving from iPhone 6 to 7 with no headphone jack. So it is always how you look at the problem. What is a problem for one client is not exactly a problem for another client. So
Hmm.
some people said that headphone jacks are great. Some people said that headphone jacks are made my old Sennheiser headsets bad. So let us
Yeah, that like it's personal opinion, but majority says like they suck.
whether the Sennheiser headphones or no headphones.
No headphones, like they took out the headphone jacket, right? So all our headphones became useless without that small connection, without the small cable, extra cable. Yeah,
Refactoring, that is the another important R of migration. Refactoring is just a small difference from the replatform. When I say refactor, I'm just going to change the binary code only. You can see the blue color part of it. That means that let us say I was running version 6 of .NET. Now I'm going to a newer version of .NET, or I'm changing from one runtime to another runtime. Very small changes, but very specific to the application binary only, not even to the user data, only to the application binary. So probably this I can call as an iPhone to Android, where the underlying engine slightly changes. Anyway, let us not get confused there. So application binary changes means we are doing a refactoring, and this will require a lot of coordination with the application team and a lot of coordination or understanding with what is the application it does, what is the dependency of that application, and all those things. Because what happens is sometimes when you're building an application, you will be leveraging that particular binary's functionality. So if you are suddenly going to move to another binary version of that runtime, you need to see whether the leveraged functionality is still available or not. So when you're moving from Java 7 to Java 8 or what is the latest version of Java, you need to see whether all it is backward compatible and whether your code can still run to whatever is written on Java 7. So you need to have that kind of understanding of your application. Then only you can go ahead and start doing a refactoring and have a successful design or successful implementation or migration. As you can see here, it could get complicated very soon because your understanding has to be completely top notch. Otherwise, you are going to have a lot of problems. So that is what refactoring. I'm going to let you read those whatever is written in the slide, but I have highlighted the most important part of refactoring on what could go wrong there. And of course, there are times that you will find that moving to a latest version of binary will improve application performance. But the downside is you don't know until you do that. Just because something is shiny new doesn't mean that it is going to be great. Once you migrate it, you might find that some other functionality is broken, but it is working fast. So that is not going to be a good scenario with your clients. You are not going to have a good time explaining to that to your customer. Again, so this is best practices for refactoring. Scope your refactoring initiative to a desired business outcome. Don't make it a re-engineering project. That is one guiding principle, or you just print it and stick it into your forehead, I would say, because it can become very easily out of control because you start doing refactoring and you will end up with a completely new application in the end. You might even end up with changing your functionality and features, and completely the whole product might change. So you end up with creating a new product or a new functionality completely. So define your target or end product or outcome to a business outcome, and then start working towards it. And there are possibilities also, as you can see in one of the points, it can allow you to introduce automated tooling like a CI/CD pipelines, or you can introduce multiple toolings in the build cycle itself. You can automate some of the test procedures, and you can automate some of the refactoring tool into your application itself, like Visual Studio. All those kind of libraries allow you to do the refactoring built into them. They have the built refactoring capability built into them, so you can leverage those functionalities also to do refactoring. And of course, Visual Studio is compatible with its own versions. If you're moving from Visual Studio one version to another version, it will be able to do it, not cross-functional. So these are some of the best practices for doing refactoring. Finally, you will do re-architecting. I don't have to say anything about this. This is straightforward. Re-architecting, in other words, building the application completely from scratch. Everything gets changed here. So that is why you don't see the green box on the right hand side. There the user data comes in. You might go with the SaaS application. As you can see there, the SaaS application has a dollar symbol in the beginning. So you just pay money to somebody and they will build that application and keep it ready, and you pay only for the usage. Or you might have a hosted solution also. That is, some third party will offer you to run it, manage it on behalf of you also. That is also possible. Or you yourself can decide to rewrite the whole application by moving the data to the cloud. So that is what re-architecting means, or in other words, you can, some people call it replace your existing application with a newer application. So whenever somebody says SaaS, it is the replace. If you are going to write it, it is going to be re-architect. Pros and cons. Data migration is still required even if a replace is the strategy. That is, let us say you are going to you are running a SharePoint server, not SharePoint server. Let us say Outlook on your on-premise infrastructure. Your client is running Outlook on on-premise. So everybody has a mailbox. Everybody has a lot of customer data, and you are decided to move to the cloud. So you go ahead and buy a Office 365 subscription in Azure now. Of course, you are an AWS architect, you are buying Office 365 in Azure. I would say still that is a very good decision. Mailboxes are great in Outlook, at least in my opinion. So now you want to move your mailboxes from on-premise to cloud now. That problem is not going to go away even if you decide to remove your Outlook servers. So data migration is going to be still required even if replace is the strategy. And just by doing that, you also remove the need for those Outlook hardware on your on-premise and Outlook software on your on-premise. You are going to use only for the resources that you are going to use. So if you are, so if you are going to have 200 users or 200 employees in your company, you are going to buy 200 seats or 200 licenses. That might not work because you might not be able to predict your employee growth to such an extent. It might be very difficult. So you might buy more licenses and keep it ready. But in the cloud, it is very easy to procure additional licenses for your Office 365 seats and then release them when it is not required also. So that way your cost comes down, and you have a nice SLAs also tied to your SaaS products. So you can define your SLAs instead of your IT department. You can work with the vendor itself for your SaaS products and then work with the SLAs. And it makes more sense to go with the SaaS products rather than re-architect whenever possible. Finally, to summarize, evaluate your options and don't just jump into re-architecting because it is cool to do, or it is gives you an opportunity to experiment something. So you need to see your financial viability, your security, your compliance, your regulatory. So, and ultimately you still decide that re-architecting is the option, go for it. Otherwise, try to go for the replace R, or in other words, go for a SaaS solution. And if you're going to still do a re-architect, build and run in parallel and do a lot of testing and test each and every functional component, and then you migrate to your target operating system or target VMs. So this is a nice little summary of the all the things that we spoke about, comparing the different migration strategies for the 6 R's. As you can see here, the refactoring has the highest dollar amount or dollar savings, most rewarding, not dollar cost, dollar savings actually it is. So when you do a refactoring, because you are going to change your binary code compatibility to your newer version, you are going to release your older operating systems, older binaries, so application performance will increase and your time to market or your release of new products will also increase. Of course, it takes more time, but it has the more reward. And as I spoke about earlier, as you can see, the migration for Rehost is marked as the balanced strategy. This one, almost most of the industry follows this one because it ticks off all the boxes. Time wise, it is not too bad. Cost wise, it is almost close, and it increases the agility also. It ticks off all the three important sections for an enterprise, and it moves them. It gives them a faster migration, so people choose this most of the cases. And this is a nice fishbone view or a flow view for the 6 R's. So when somebody asks you do a migration, the first step is to do is a discover phase. You go and discover what are all the applications that are there in the on-premise infrastructure, and then you do an assessment of that infrastructure. There are multiple tools that nowadays helps you. One tool that I have seen people use, that is I'm just trying to get the name of the product. It is called Cloudscape, Cloud, Cloudscape. Amazon also has a product for this. It is I forgot the name of it. Amazon Inspector or something is there. It will inspect. I'm not sure whether it is Amazon Inspector, but there is a product for that. Amazon will find out what is the operating system, what is the hardware, what is the versions, and it will try to map out, just like a DMS service. It will try to map out what could be your target EC2 instance that could run that service. If it is a database, it will try to map it to a RDS instance. So Cloudscape is another tool. Risk 42, 42, RASC 42. If you Google these two product terms, you should be able to get the products. And there is one more product. I'm trying to recollect the name. Probably I won't get it. Anyway, so there are multiple tools people use for discovering what is the application discovery. In other words, it is called to discover what applications are there, and then what is the dependencies or what is the versions they are running. So you discover first, and then you assess them. When I do assess, you bring up the different point of views or viewpoints. You assess them based on technical adequacy, functional adequacy, compliance standards, regulatory standards, and then risk standards, that is security and all those things. And then you map it out, which of those R's that you need to use. So once you choose the R, that is determine your R path, then you decide whether you're going to decommission or retire. In other words, do not move, or that means that retain, or are you going to use what you call this, I forgot the R. Let me just quickly go back. Replace R. This is the replace R. Or if you're going to do a refactoring, these are the refactoring steps that you need to do. And likewise, when you say application lift and shift, that means that you are doing a rehost. So this is a nice flow chart of different activities that starts at this point. The different R's starts here, and finally everything will end up here. You'll give it to your You plan your migration, you sequence them, you create a roadmap, and you do a fine tuning, and then you get a sign off from your customer, and then you go to cutover, and then you do a run and operate. So everything eventually ends up here at the run and operate. So if you decide to do a re-architect or a recode, then you end up with architect for AWS environment. That is, you decide what is your target operating environment in AWS, and you start architecting for that. Sometimes it might be worthwhile to move into a serverless architecture or a container-based architecture, microservices in other words, and then you can save a lot of cost by choosing those options when you're doing the re-architecting your application. So it is not one solution that fits all. And when I say that, it is not like one solution fits all the applications. Some applications might benefit by refactoring, some applications might benefit by leaving it as it is. So you choose the appropriate UR for that application. And this is very, very important. If you don't plan properly, your cost of your migration is going to balloon during the migration bubble, and then your cost of migration comes down all the way to operations and optimization part. So always do your planning. Once you finish your planning, do your duplicate version of the environment, do your training, and consult third party or consult with AWS. You understand your lease penalties. This is one familiar thing I spoke about yesterday also. Remember the database penalties we spoke about. Likewise, there are data center penalty clauses are there. Let us say you have decided to buy or lease data center space for 3 years, and all of a sudden you decide to go to the cloud after the first year, and you're vacating your data center in 1 year itself. There might be some penalty clauses, and you might have to pay your lease contract fees or penalty clause fees to your data center provider. So this cost might nullify the benefits of moving to your cloud. So you need to understand sometimes this cost as well, or talk to your client saying, do you have any clauses like this? And sometimes people engage other third-party products for managing their hardware and data center, and those third parties will also have some contracts which will have some lease penalties, which if they are breaking it in the first initial period itself. So some of these things that you need to keep in mind when you are doing your migration. And if I have to put everything in one slide, so these are the strategic things that matters. What are the cost, what is the uncertainty, what is the flexibility that you have. Remember the constraints we spoke about, it's the same things in a different words when you're doing migration. And what are the key cost factors that is a different viewpoints for you again. What are the current cost, what is the likely like for like cost, what is the architectural cost, and finally your different analysis approaches. So combined together you migrate them. This is how you migrate your application from on-premise to cloud using any of the 6R strategies that we spoke about just now. Here are the different tools that are provided by AWS itself for doing your migration. Remember the product name that I said I forgot. This is the name of the product, Application Discovery Service. So again, you can download this and run it in your on-premise infrastructure. It will give you a nice report of what is running, what is connecting to what are the ports, what is the operating system, what is the application, and all those things. And using the AWS Architecture Center, you can plan it. There are a lot of reference architectures provided here. A lot of customer references are also provided here and how they have migrated, and very high level architecture is there. Based on that, you can do your planning. Once you finish your planning, then you move on to the next stage of server migration or DB migrations. Again, AWS has a couple of tools. We spoke about server migration service. What it does is it is another a tool or a VM that you will configure it in your on-premise and connect it to your AWS account, and that is your destination, and you point it at your source VMs also. You say that these are the 10 VMs that I want to migrate to cloud, and you schedule the time that you want to migrate your VMs. So the SMS service tries to copy the data as a snapshot and send it to S3 and try to create a VM file, and it automatically tries to set up your EC2 instances also. So it is a completely hands-off approach, and you can schedule it. That means that it is automated as well. So you can do it anytime you want once you have your migration planning done. That is for your server level. Finally, for your database, you have the DMS service. Configure a DMS to move your database data from your on-premise to cloud. And if you remember, we spoke about the VMware exporter option, where VMware can directly talk to cloud and send the VMs from your on-premise to cloud itself. So you have these three different options for sending your server and DB data to the cloud. So if you don't want to do this DMS service, then if you want to do your data manually, say for example you have a lot of photos or your files that are on premises that you want to send it to cloud, so then you can use any of these data migration services that Amazon provides. You can use transfer acceleration, storage gateway, Snowball, any of them. You choose whichever is best for you and how much time you have for migration or data transfer. Then you choose the appropriate strategy there. Finally, once your migration is done, or if your migration is ongoing, if you want to have metrics, then CloudWatch, we already know how to do that. And Marketplace allows you to replace your existing applications when you move to the cloud by buying some SaaS applications from the cloud itself. So with this, we have learned how to migrate servers using the 6R strategies. And if it is database, use the DMS service. And if you cannot do a SMS or a DMS services, then you use the data transfer mechanism to move your data to the cloud and use them and monitor it with CloudWatch and replace them completely with the Marketplace also. I hope this helps you in your migration strategies in future. Thank you.